So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining My Path of Asha. Of course, My Path of Asha is a show where we share real stories of those who are walking the path of Asha and carrying the light of a Ahura Mazda into the world. So, today we have with us a very good friend of mine, close friend of mine, been known very intelligent, smart guy. His name is Dimitri. He's from Belgrade, Serbia. He's a fellow Ashovan. He's a very passionate, very intelligent force in this community. And so he's here to share his story that reflects the sacred fire that's burning within all of us. So, how are you doing today, Dimitri?
Very good, and thank you very much for having me on. And it's my it's my pleasure to be here. And hopefully we can have a kind of profound discussion about what it means to search for the truth in life, as it
Absolutely.
were. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I know your story will touch so many and inspire others. And with your genius intellect, I know they're really going to see great incentive in this faith. All right. So
Thank
for our
you.
first question, oh, my pleasure. So for our first question, so I know it's a pretty simple one. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what you were raised with spiritually, and how that shaped you as an individual.
Mhm. Of course. So I have spent basically all of my life living in Belgrade in Serbia, and I didn't have. It can't really be said that I had like a religious upbringing. It was definitely secular. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, living in Serbia, it definitely has this kind of like kind of underpinning where sooner or later you'll encounter something that's like Orthodox Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the same way you might find, like for example, in Serbia, Easter, Orthodox Easter is actually a state holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Alongside, it's a bit kind of it's a little paradoxical, but being a formerly communist country, both Easter and the 1st of May are public holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Even though those two kind of don't really overlap, but in any case, yeah. Um, we had a few run-ins with occasionally we would have kind of interactions with the church life growing up. I think at one time my parents even briefly considered sending me to kind of like an Orthodox kindergarten or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But it wasn't really a pressing force until about when I was 12, when my parents unfortunately did have to go through. My parents kind of stopped seeing eye to eye, and then we got some other family members coming in and kind of inciting us to. It's the usual story where this person like had a very personal traumatic experience, and then they were kind
Mm-hmm.
of led into the faith through fear. And then they kind of like projected that same thing onto us in the name of some higher salvation, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I actually kind of took it to heart the most because even though we kind of eventually no longer followed this kind of like strict dogma that's associated with it. I remember, for example, I was the only one. I actually distinctly remember saying to myself, like, "There's no way God is this cruel."
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, go into too many details about what exactly it was. It was obviously the nature of it is just that it was just so much. It was just so foreign to us at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that you might even see or experience in the church. So when I grew up and kind of started going back to church, there's actually this sermon that was held by one of the priests that I kind of remember. And it's something like the priest was giving this sermon where there was a woman there were two women. Both were pregnant, but
Mm-hmm.
one was actually going to church while she was still pregnant. And even after the baby was born, they would regularly go to church with this baby. It would grow up in the church, basically. Even before, according to Orthodox doctrine, little girls they eat the forbidden fruit, so to speak. They learn the
Mm-hmm.
difference between good and evil at age 6, and boys learn the difference at age 7, something like that, I
Mm.
remember. So
Wow.
even before, while this baby was like 4 or 5 years, they were still a toddler, so 4 or 5 years old, they would like go to practice confessions
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of get in the mood of the doctrine. So all of this stuff, and then when they were about 12, 13, 14 years old, about how much, I was when we started going to church, kind of when we had this dramatic shift towards going to church, they were completely calm. Everything was normal to them. Everything was okay. But this other child, their mother didn't go through all of that. They didn't go to the church. They didn't have practice confessions even before they knew what good and evil was. You know, they were introduced to the church at 12, 13, 14, and it was just like a nightmare for them, right? So the point,
Wow.
the sermon, the point of the sermon that the priest was giving is exactly that, if you do these things with your child, so take them to church from the very like beginning, from conception.
Hmm.
They will not be foreign and it will not be alien to them. Whereas if you don't do all these things, then so you don't have to go through this like extreme, in my opinion, just kind of demonic experience where someone is like invalidating your trauma. Like if you've been to church
Wow.
and if you've been traumatized by that experience, like someone will just say, "Oh, well, no, it's just that you're being told not to sin or something like that, and that shouldn't be
Mm.
traumatic." It's like, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that it's alien. So, and the
Hmm.
point of me like recounting this sermon is specifically to show how within the life of the church, this is a known quantity, right? So this isn't some mystery why people get traumatized by being kind of forced into an environment that's very kind of strange and foreign, especially to us as Serbians, because in the Orthodox Church, there's this position where they like the vernacular.
Hmm.
The hymns and the stuff like that are should be according to tradition in the vernacular. But then you get this confused mess where because of like the Ottoman conquests,
Mm. Yeah.
A lot of like Russian priests had to kind of service and redo the liturgy. So it's very weird. There in the Serbian churches, there's this thing where, like, again, they're very proud of themselves for like, unlike these Latin heretics, the Roman Catholics, they do all their hymns in the vernacular, but they don't. It's this weird kind of love child of Russian and Serbian that, like,
Mm.
if you're not studying, it's like it's Church Slavonic. It's the Serbian version of the Russian version of Church Slavonic, which just isn't the
Hmm.
vernacular. So it's a complete
Wow.
mess in that regard. So surprise, surprise, for me it was also a traumatizing experience because, like, why am I being forced to go to church? What is this like person telling me I'm going to go to hell if I do this thing or that thing? Like, what is this? Even in spite of all of that, I do still remember um going to bed but making like the sign of the cross three
Mm. Yep.
times
I can relate to that.
before going to bed, or like even if I already got into bed, I'd make the sign of the cross while I was still like sleeping before I went to sleep, that kind of thing. And it kind of stuck with me because as I was growing up, I was always kind of somewhere around when I was 14, 15, 16, I was drawn to the traditionalist ideology, which was really kind of spearheaded by Catholics. I just, adopted all of the ideological principles and just kind of applied it to Orthodoxy instead.
Mm.
So that's even though like I said, I had that thing where I said, well, I don't believe God is this cruel. Eventually, I found my way back to kind of to being spiritual and kind of gravitating towards Christianity at first on an ideological level and then later on a fully religious level. So that would be my background.
Absolutely. Well, that's amazing.
Mhm.
Wow, that really just shows again, like you were kind of seeing, like you were talking about how Serbia, coming from previously being a communist country, you're kind of seeing a void or a vacuum, a sense of religious life is now becoming, again, something that was once deprived, under the Soviets,
Mhm.
now is becoming something very common again. I guess in a time now with uncertainty, there's this belief that there needs to be a strength and something of a higher power. And it sounds good in theory, but as you're saying, now the church is operating off of fear and it's operating off a basis of, and I get it too. You could say it's mostly a nationalistic incentive
Mhm.
to really have the church be at the center of people's lives again after being under godlessness. But I can really see just how sense of that sense of trauma and that sense of trying to force people into believing something. And it's sad because like what you're really showing me is that there wasn't really choice per se. It was mainly, oh, do this, believe this, and if you don't, you're going to go to hell or whatever you went in your past traumas. It doesn't matter. All you need is Jesus, and all you need to do is learn the hymns, the vernacular, and so that sounds like it's a good thing, but then you see that it doesn't really add to a sense of like a spiritual fulfillment. And I feel that that's something that even I have experienced in my church where growing up, first thing you're told is you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in Christ. Oh, but Christ loves you. He gave himself for you. He's on the cross. But that really just showed again that there was a force for you to believe rather than you out of your own conviction believing. And I do think that's really a shared pattern with Christianity, no matter if you're Orthodox, you're Christian, I'm sorry, Orthodox, you're Catholic, you're a Lutheran Orthodox. It's a universal theme of this press of fear, and I'm glad you were able to question things and move out of it. So for our next question, I would say is when was it at that one moment in your life where you started questioning or searching for something much deeper?
I think I was for about as long as I can remember, I've always been searching for something deeper. It's kind of the reason why even after with my, with my secular friends and family's help, I was able to kind of break that initial trauma of being introduced to Orthodox Christianity. Um, Very early on, I kind of started thinking about, okay, but why did this thing happen? Or, what where is it going to take me if I go down this road kind of mentality
Hmm.
and again, ironically, it did kind of allow me to circle back, like I said, first on an ideological level and then on a spiritual level, on a religious level, to actually start going to church again of my own will somewhere when I was about 18 years, 17, 18 years old. That's about when I started going to church again. When I was a kid and when I started going to church again, both times I was actually an acolyte,
Hmm.
which is a cooler way of saying altar boy. Altar boy has certain negative connotations, whereas acolyte sounds just so much more mysterious and powerful. But yeah, I was an acolyte in the Orthodox Church, and the problem is, um, how would I say it for Zoroastrianism? I think that moment came. I had learned about Zoroastrianism, I think, very, very early on, but I just never like researched it very much. I think it's
Hmm.
going back to all the way. The first time I maybe heard about Zoroastrianism was, I think, 2015.
Hmm.
I'm kind of hesitant to talk about this because it's kind of like awkward. It was someone posted like a really racist meme. I
Mm.
don't know if you like it's not like too it's not I don't know if you would consider this to be too bad. It can definitely leave a very negative impression on some people.
I probably saw it
So
'cause I saw it on Twitter. Maybe I have.
you probably saw it. There's this video on YouTube that was posted by a Zoroastrian priest, I believe, and it's actually called like Zoroastrianism colon a powerful mantra against black magic.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because
I
that's my friend. That's my
know.
friend Kenneth. That's my friend Kenneth.
Yeah, that's Kenneth. Kenneth, yeah, that's your friend Kenneth. And all the way back in like 2015, 2016, someone just made like a quick edit and said like powerful mantra against black people.
Yeah, I
And
saw that. I saw
that's the
that.
one. I think that's the first time I saw like even like what is even Zoroastrianism?
Hmm.
But I didn't look too much into it. In my mind back then I was like, okay, there's this like random, I don't know, Z religion somewhere out there in like Asia or something. They probably
Hmm.
have like a it wouldn't be too surprising for someone who knows nothing about Zoroastrianism because like for example in Shia Islam they actually have writings that are actually openly racist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've read
Yeah,
them.
like exactly. So like, vaguely Eurasia, some religion out there is like, yeah, okay, whatever. But of course, very early on in Zoroastrianism, you learn that it's the complete opposite of that, naturally.
Hmm.
Um, Even more so than like in Orthodoxy, because in Orthodoxy, nominally they're of course also anti-racist, but the problem the problem is that for Orthodoxy for a lot of people is a very kind of like folk religion. So
Hmm.
you'll have these like, veil-wearing babushkas kind of walking
Oh yeah.
around, and if they kind of go onto a bus and if they see a black person, they might like make the sign of the cross or something because they've never seen a black person in their life. But
Wow.
like obviously for educated Orthodox Christians, it is an anti-racist religion. I don't want to be too kind of like slandering or anything, but for
Hmm.
ordinary people, Zoroastrianism is the complete opposite because I kind of very early on you learn to kind of Zoroastrian operates in a very kind of pluralistic paradigm, right? So very
Hmm.
early on, you're learning to kind of embrace or kind of entertain different ideas, different kind of backgrounds, different perspectives. So for Zoroastrianism, the moment when I started seriously considering Zoroastrianism was about after I had already left Christianity for the second and final time.
Mm.
Um, I think it was like 2022, 2023. I kind of had this like impulse where like I, I kind of like miss having this thing where like I'm waking up and there's a higher power and I'm actually committing my actions to this higher power. So I wasn't aware of it at the time, but the first time I really kind of practiced orthodoxy, when I started going to church again, it was much more Zoroastrian, right? The more time I spent in the church, the less Zoroastrian the praxis became. So I hadn't, I was secretly practicing Zoroastrianism without really being aware of it, because it was about what kind of action. Actually, like I very, very much already followed the practice of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds when I started going to church because I was thinking that
Hmm.
these are three kind of like offerings or sacrifices that I can like give unto God. So, for example, I would
Absolutely.
before I would work out at the gym, I would like say a prayer and then commit me working out at the gym to Jesus Christ, or I would commit this like I would, for example, give to charity and I would give alms to the poor, and I would say, "This is an offering of me unto you, O Jesus Christ, that I am, O Lord, that I am giving this alm." And only later did it become like, you kind of have to deal with this like random nonsense. Like it's a sin to bring in animals into your house. So if you have a dog or a cat,
Hmm.
that's already a sin. That's very that's not Protestant. That is Orthodox. Like
Wow. Okay.
it's not like Puritanism. Like Puritanism is like a I don't know, it's like a buzzword as far as I'm concerned. Like
Hmm.
in original Orthodox doctrine, they have all sorts of like weird like for example, women on their periods, they have to stand at the back of the church.
Mm.
Women they shouldn't even take communion, so they're actually um it's kind of weird because Orthodoxy is very amoebic in that sense. There are obviously
Mm.
multiple currents, each claiming to be, multiple perspectives, each claiming to be the one true Orthodoxy, and
Hmm.
that these other currents, oh, they aren't representative. They aren't like, just don't think about them. So some people might disagree, but some people you'll hear, like, for example, say, well, you still have to like fulfill tenets of the old law. You can't, for example, take communion while you're quote unquote bleeding because then it like comes out of you and it's like sacrilege or
Hmm.
something. Um, there's like various stuff like obviously you can't cuss. Like you can't, which it seems trivial, but it's important to remember these are like low, simple things. The thing that kind of like there's 50 different reasons I can give for why I left Orthodoxy, but a very big reason is the fact that it completely desecrates the notion of simplicity in life. Like life is no longer simple.
Hmm.
Suddenly life is just so much more complicated and it's so alien and you kind of have to constantly be where you realize it is no longer a religion about loving Christ. You recognize within yourself that you're no longer having this love. You're just kind
Absolutely.
of like suppressing yourself constantly, so you're not even living. You try to obey these like monastics or things, and you realize that even as you try to obey them, you're just not fulfilling what they had in their mind when they
Exactly.
give you commandments, right? So I left Orthodoxy and I decided that in spite of all that, I still want to have that element in my life where I would do those things. I would say there is a God of light and good and hope, and I offer up me working at the gym. working out at the gym to this God, and I offer up my me speaking the truth to this God. And that's kind of where like just the theme of it, I already started thinking that sounds a lot like like don't they have this kind of like God of light versus like a God of evil or
Mm-hmm.
darkness or something? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can do that. Like, oh, I'm waging a war against my own passions or my own like sins, so to speak. I'm waging a war against the against like false being. Um, so it's like, yeah, let's actually give Zoroaster. Like, I wasn't sure when I'd exactly convert. I think listening to Faria Faraji on YouTube has done
Mm-hmm.
wonders for that because he does this thing where music is one of those things where like as long as someone is playing it, that culture is still alive.
Exactly.
So for me to listen to all of that music, kind of, I think the very mo point in time where I decided that I would convert is his song Asparon. So
Mm.
like commit devoted to like the Middle Persian Knights. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Like the Savaran and all them.
the Savaran exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
there are like three different words. So Savaran
Yeah.
from Asavaran,
Yep.
which is
Then you had
Aswaron or Asparon.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. You got it
exactly,
perfectly.
exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so and that's nice. That's the moment I think it wasn't really conscious decision so much as in like like a automatic recognition that this is a living culture. This is still here, and there are still these Zoroastrians that I can actually talk to. So that's when I like sent a message to the World Zoroastrian Organization, and they sent me over to the California Zoroastrian Center, and well,
Mm-hmm.
you know, now you and I know each other, so that's
You know, that's
yeah.
amazing. Well,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
And you know what? I'm so glad you brought all that up in your story, like with the Orthodoxy, and because there was a point in my life where I thought about becoming a Greek
Mhm.
Orthodox because I like you, I was really feeling like my background as a Protestant, and I grew up in a dual household. My dad was a Roman Catholic, and much like you, he was also an altar boy growing up. He went to well, he grew up in San Francisco. He went to I think what was that church called? I believe it's called like Shipwreck. I think it was St. Paul's Shipwreck church. It was a Catholic church, and he spent most of his life there being, taught the faith. He even thought about becoming a priest. I also had, idea of becoming a priest in my life, but we all separated from that. And, much kind of like your objections to, like you're just seeing that even in Orthodoxy, not only do you have this folk stuff, you have all these other ways of connecting to God. Like, was it through theosis and in many other ways? I mean, stuff that I'm still, not as well versed in. But you're just noticing that there's just too many prescriptions, and like there's too many sacraments you got to follow, and then you start seeing that this is not like you said, it's not even about Jesus anymore. It's about you trying to prove yourself. And I thought the original message of Christ was you're supposed to simply just have a relationship with Him, but now it's like you're doing all these extra rituals in order to get to God. And then another defining thing that really shows this defeatism in Christianity is no matter how good you are, you're never good. There is no, like, what does St. Paul say? There is none righteous, not one. And so no matter what actions you're performing, you feel as if though everything you're doing is counterproductive. And so my thing was, why do all these sacraments and why even try to connect with God and be holy or reach his level of the saints when everything you do is counterproductive? And the fact that there is such fatalism in the both the Catholic and the Orthodox faiths about everything being under God's will. I know you read about that a lot in the book of Philippians. And so you hear about these about this relationship, but it doesn't become a relationship anymore. It's about you, like you said, suppressing yourself, proving yourself, but you're never good enough. Whereas with Ahura Mazda, what Zarathustra taught, he says, no, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And he says that every one of us is a co-worker of God, and we're here to ensure that we all spread Ushta, was a radiant happiness, and each and every one of us is that conduit. And you really feel as that if there's no separation between us. I mean, I know God is his own distinct being, but he fashioned you and made him like your conduit from which Asha flows. And to know that you as an individual can have your actions, words, and deeds, create let's just say, not only a continuum to where it can redefine existence as it continues on, but it just shows you that you matter, your efforts matter, they don't go in vain. And more importantly, Mazda is not worried about these prescriptive rituals, especially how you mentioned, you want to keep an element of God and these principles you learn in the church, but you realize that all of these prescriptions they're just too overbearing, and the fact that you want simplicity. And when you have the Gathas, you have these 17 songs, and these can be read in under an hour, but yet you can always read and find something new. And the tenets of them are just so simple, but they're just so defining and powerful on their own. And so the beauty of it is that you can keep, the idea of belief in God and purpose and have a goal in life religiously, but you don't require all these prescriptions and then all this clerical control in the churches, and then that translates into again to folk traditions and all these other things that are not even part of the original teachings of Christ, where you start seeing now different sects and different branches of the church, the Orthodox, oh, sorry, the Oriental, the Greek, the Russian, the what's the other one, or the Orthodox Catholic. So the beauty about Zoroastrianism is that you have, one really interpretation. I know there's some schisms between the Parsis and the Zoroastrians, but that's more cultural. But here we all have same scripture, the same goal, and that is to be a hamkar, a co-worker to spread light and truth and, so forth. But now to get to our next question, so
Excuse me.
what was,
But
oh yeah,
so I'll definitely try to like wrap up me talking about Orthodoxy, and we'll get to talking about
oh yeah, no problem.
Zoroastrianism. Obviously, I'm not here just to talk about like me having a negative experience with Orthodoxy. It's about me having a positive experience with Zoroastrianism. But I think the best way to kind of wrap up everything that we've been saying is you brought up a good point about us. None of us are righteous according to the Apostle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of weird because when I started going to church, the reason I felt like I was actually in love with God was this idea, this kind of like transcendent idea that if am going to be a Christian, if I'm going to fulfill God's mandates, that my reward for that would not be a material worldly reward. Rather, it would be the spiritual reward of being
Mm-hmm.
righteous. And I thought that this kind of like positive feedback loop of I want to be a Christian so that I can be rewarded by being pleasing to God. That's the positive feedback loop, right? The more I please God, the more I'm a Christian, and the more I please God, and it kind of keeps going up. And it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, this it's actually so super easy. Like I can totally feel God's love and all that. There's this weird little thing where I think this is a doctrine that is exclusive to Eastern Orthodoxy. So this is the branch of Christianity that is followed by predominantly Russians, Serbians, Romanians, Bulgarians, Georgians, and Greeks. Um, Not Armenians, they're in the Oriental branch. They
Mm-hmm.
often get lumped in with the Eastern Orthodox, even though Eastern and Oriental mean the same thing.
Yeah.
But so there's this doctrine called prelest. I
Premise.
think it's prelest. It's a Slavonic term. And what it means is there are two kinds of prelest. There's chronic and acute prelest, or prelest in the wider sense and in the narrow sense. And in the wider
Mm.
sense, in this chronic sense, prelest is this idea. Actually, it's easier to start from this like acute prelest, this like kind of deep, precise prelest. It's the sin of saying I am a saint.
Mm.
So the true saints, they
Wow.
say for themselves, I am a sinner. They don't say I am humble. That's also prelist. But
Mm.
so the opposite of prelist is spiritual sobriety, and it's this like awareness of your sin.
Mm.
Whereas the person who is infected with prelist, they think of themselves as being holy. And
Mm.
the point is that so this acute prelist is this idea of I am holy, I am a saint, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Everyone shut up and listen to me.
Mm.
That's acute prelist. And then there's chronic, or like kind of a wider prelist, which is everyone has this prelist. This is like what is meant when it's said that pride is like the root
Mm.
of all evil or something
Oh
like
yeah, the
that. Or
hubris. Oh yeah,
hubris,
hubris.
yeah. So the prelist is in this wider sense, you as a human being cannot even fathom how many like self-asserting or self-referential allowances you give yourself that you think you have the right to do something, but actually everything must be considered a mercy of God.
Mm,
Or a privilege appointed by God. So, like, if you enter a room and you, like, I don't know, turn a switch, or if you, like, sit in a specific way, oh, well, have you thought about whether or not you accidentally offended someone if you did that?
hmm,
So like the fact that it didn't even occur to you is your actual prelist. This is something that, you're not even aware of, like how many like sins of pride you commit, like you commit them on like a
hmm.
nanosecond basis.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
kind of that's prelist in the wider sense, and it's kind of why Paul says that, and it's why all these Orthodox monastics, why like their practice revolves around kind of self-humiliation, kind of.
Mm-hmm. See?
So it's like it's this idea that they're aware that of how easily they can like commit these like it's microaggressions. That's literally what it is. It's like the church invented
Mm.
microaggressions like centuries before like the modern woke culture, right? Woke
Wow.
culture,
So no matter
kind of
what you
like
did, you're
yeah, like I find it very hypocritical when Christians complain about woke culture because like they like invented microaggressions. At least the Orthodox Christians did.
see, wow. See,
It
gonna show
is
you that
yeah,
nothing's new under
and
the sun. Everything gets
not,
repackaged.
nothing new under the sun exactly. My point is that so imagine the irony of like the reason why I'm in love with God and the reason why it seems all so easy and why why it should be obvious that God loves you and wants you under in his fold. It's like, well, wait a second. If I thank God, if I say thank you, God, for making me righteous, then it's a paradox. I've already committed a prelist. I've already committed like
See?
this. So it's like, it's not so you think of this like, oh well, when did you decide to leave the church? I didn't decide to leave the church. Like it was years and years of me just like you said, no matter what I do, it's wrong somehow. So the decision
Mm-hmm.
is only to realize that you've been at this for years at this point and that this isn't even what they had in mind. So, kind of like it's better, kind of like what Jesus said, because you are neither hot nor cold, you are only lukewarm. For that reason, I will spit you out of my mouth. So you like
Mm-hmm.
there is no decision to kind of not be hot, to not love Christ. Rather, you realize that Christianity, by its own merit, causes you to be lukewarm, and then you just decide that
Exactly.
it's a better option to be cold in that case,
Ex-
because that's literally what Jesus said. So it's like a very self-defeating kind of doctrine. Like, well, I've literally lost the reason I'm even grateful for God because so like this like led me into the church. Now I don't have it, and now I'm scrambling for a reason to keep going to church while I'm forcing myself. It's like
See?
you can see this is like a demonic arrangement. This is not
Exactly.
this is a falsehood. Like absolutely. So like in the Orthodox Church, they have this idea where the life in the church is is itself a distinction in this like infallible revelation of God. So you can be an intellectual as much as you want. You can be a philosopher as much as you want. You can argue the transcendental argument. You can talk about epistemology. You can talk about like like the necessity of God's existence or like whatever you want that you think like helps your case on a philosophical argumentative level. The fact is that life in the church is just so self-defeating that you like there's like if you're being honest with yourself, then the infallible revelation has already fallen, like it's already failed.
See, it's already
Because
fatalistic. Already
yeah,
fatalist.
yeah, it's already like it's already kind of looped back around to bite itself, because of life in the
Mm-hmm.
church. And usually their response might be something like, "Oh, well, no, this thing doesn't qualify as life in the church, or this thing doesn't
Mm-hmm.
qualify as the holy tradition." Really, they don't even have a device to determine these things. They don't actually know what is or is not the holy tradition and what might be like a fad or a fashion. It's like it's more so if they like something, they'll think of it as holy, infallible tradition, and if they don't like it, then they just say it's a fad. Like how many decades, if not centuries, was the church under iconoclasm, right? How many Like, for example, you get this icon of Saints Peter and Paul kind of reconciling. Well, hold on a second. I learned even in church that the early apostles, the first generation of Christians thought that the end of the world was coming before the end of their lifetime. So
Yeah, that's what.
this isn't even like something that comes from apologetics. This comes from my experience in the church, from sermons, from priests telling me that in the first generation of Christians, they believed that the end of the world was coming before the end of the lifetime.
Yep.
Okay, so automatically we don't have the same religion as the first generation Christians.
Exactly. Because remember,
Just by virtue of, well, it hasn't happened yet, you can't claim to be the original church formed at Pentecost.
exactly,
It
because
it's
that's how it
like,
was. That's how it
yeah,
was, especially at the book of Thessalonians. That's what that whole thing was about.
it's completely like, yeah, it's completely nebulous. So I mean there's a lot more I'd say on the subject, but obviously I think we should move on.
Oh, absolutely. But that was
Um
very,
yeah.
that was actually a great one, like you said. Well, before we move on, but I think
Mhm.
a few things I want to point out, and that's I think the reason why, as you mentioned, this is something that has shown what Zarathustra talks about, this Druge. And it's not to say that the people are intentionally bad. I know there's well-meaning behind the faith, but what you're seeing is this idea of mortification and this asceticism. And Zarathustra taught us that basically, you live life to its fullest. Even some of the later Pahlavi texts, like the Minag Card, says that basically to live a life of fear and falsehood is worse than death, and everybody's life is necessary for a pleasurable and enjoyable existence. And to be deprived of that in this life and to feel that you're never good enough, I mean, that's something that is so, antithetical to Zoroastrianism. And so I'm happy you've evolved from it and we've all moved on from it. I've been a victim of it. So it's a beautiful thing to know that how this religion is still here to enlighten us and allow us to live not only happily, but in Asha, but as complete human beings. So, yeah, let me see to our next question. So, what was it about the Zoroastrian faith that really spoke to you the most?
I think something that I'm not sure if I can really put my finger on like a doctrine or a principle or a philosophy of the faith that spoke to me the most at that point in time. I'd actually say it's more so something found in scripture, which I found very inspiring. But to answer the question in a way that's kind of still relevant to this very moment, to this very day, I definitely like the fact that um, the emphasis on happiness. And
Mm,
I think the reason why is I noticed that it's not just in Christianity, but in other systems as well, or really doesn't really matter what system you ultimately come from, but if you're, no matter what the doctrine says, no matter what the dogma says, no matter what, people might normally say when asked about something like this, if you hear the word happiness and it gives you a small little anxiety spike, that's an illness. That's literally less so a mental illness, but more so a spiritual illness. That you hear the word happiness, and no matter what excuse you give to say that happiness isn't inherently a sin, in your system or whatever, like, no matter what excuse, if you hear the word happiness, if you hear the word the human heart or phrase the human heart, and you just immediately think of bad things, of negativity, I would say that is an illness. Like definitely, I mean, for sure, very early on in the Zoroastrian religion, I kind of learned that, I mean, even the Greeks, when they were recounting when they were giving their account on the Persian religion, were quick to note that there seems to be this great aspect within the Persian religion that concerns itself with the distinction between honorable pleasures and dishonorable pleasures.
mm,
So
exactly.
In the Zoroastrian religion, there is this objective kind of, not everything that is pleasing is necessarily good. There is a lot of responsibility and like epistemic accountability invested into discerning honorable pleasures from dishonorable pleasures. But having said that, the advantage of the system is that it actually treats happiness as a good thing until proven otherwise. So you can
Exactly.
have that clause. You can have that clause that says until proven otherwise, where not every pleasure is necessarily honorable, but you're at a much more spiritually healthy place if you can hear happiness and find consolation in it, rather than coming from a place where you hear happiness and it's like it's sinful until proven otherwise. That's because happiness, I would consider happiness to be a divine attribute. So in my theology, I don't know if you agree, it's certainly something that warrants a kind of discussion on its own. But I would actually argue I find more comfort in Ormazd, in God, as actually being perpetually happy.
Oh, I do
Because,
absolutely.
yeah, because he is all seeing and he can see that end, that actually he is always impulsively happy. Impulsively is probably maybe a rough word there, but let's just say
Hmm.
impulsively
I feel it.
reactively happy because of his all-seeing nature, that he can see the end of all things and see exactly how everything's going to be all right in the end.
Absolutely.
So when he does that, it provides you kind of a spiritual olive branch that you can, just by rejecting fear and misery, you have already aligned yourself with a higher wisdom that is able to
Mm.
understand how everything is going to be all right in the end in ways that you can't currently quite understand. So in
Beautiful.
that way,
Beautiful.
because I consider Zoroastrianism to be um, kind of, I don't know if this will be too loaded of a term, or to like it's a theology of divine attribute acquisition. So everything regarding the Zoroastrian spiritual life is really about acquiring these divine attributes through the Ameshaspentas.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but obviously the Ameshaspentas, these are the seven principal. We were actually just talking about this in the group chat today.
Hmm.
The Ameshaspentas are these like ways in which God's energies are manifest in the world. They're not the energies themselves per se, but they are
Absolutely.
the ways in which you come to know of the divine nature. You come to a an understanding of God's qualities. And at that point, the mission becomes to acquire these qualities for yourself. And one of these qualities is actually happiness. So already by being happy, you have kind of defeated the demon of misery. There's this like demon that's kind of poking you, that's trying to make you, miserable and afraid. And, you're thinking to yourself, well, Ormazd, he knows better than me, right?
Exactly.
So he knows better than me, and he's like always happy. So like there's always this spiritual olive branch for you to be happy because of that, rather than kind of trying to kind of wrestle out with this demon and trying to like being constantly stuck in the mud and kind of scrambling for a reason to be happy kind of thing. Which is a very kind of unhealthy way. So I would say that is something that kind of that has inspired me and continues to inspire me in terms of Zoroastrianism.
Well, that was, I mean, 100%, actually 1000% beautifully said. And I'm so glad you brought that up and how that's been matter of fact, our exact similar experiences of finding this faith because I remember reading, the Biston inscription that was written by Darius the Great, and I remember him saying, a great God is Ahura Mazda, who not just created the world, but happiness for man. Then you read about in the Gathas, was a Yasna 43:1, where Zarathushtra said, happiness is for him who makes other people happy. And our Shemvahu prayer says, righteousness is the best good, and it is happiness, and happiness is to him who is righteous for the sake of righteousness alone. And so, and I'm really glad you brought that whole situation with Christianity because maybe it was my dad's Catholic indoctrination, or maybe just overall with the Bible. Because one thing I was always taught, even among my parents who were well-meaning, and I don't have any bad blood against them, but pastors and youth pastors, people who were like spiritual advisors to my life, always told me that, oh, you shouldn't want happiness. Oh, because happiness, like as you mentioned, I think to them, they're more focused on the dishonorable happiness or the consequences of that pleasurable happiness or worldly happiness. So, like you, all my life I grew up feeling like wanting happiness is bad. And then going back to our previous question, how we're talking about, well, you're a sinner, and that term that you were mentioning, how that is used very much in the Orthodoxy and the Balkans and all of it. It's the fact that you're not good. You're not deserving of God's grace. But Jesus gave himself anyway, so that's the only grace you're worth giving. But to live this life, you're here to basically just suffer it all because you're atoning for the sins of two individuals. But yeah, growing up, I was always taught that you shouldn't want happiness. You should find purpose. But I said, but what is purpose and what? Like, what do you mean be finding purpose in something? And I mean, purpose in suffering, purpose in being miserable, and the idea that maybe God will accept me for the lowliness, this defeatism that I'm partaking in instead of the pride and hubris that it might be associated with me being happy. So I really felt that Zoroastrianism was like the greatest healing force in my life, and it was so beautifully what you said about the Amish Spentas, and I know some people want to, make them these personified beings, archangels, and some people might want to look at them as like some sort of, patron deity and all. But as you mentioned, these are like the divine aspects of God, in his qualities manifested in the world, like Spentamania. And they're here to basically remind us and to inspire us and to lead us down that path of Amr Dad, that perfection, that immortality. Because, at the end of the times, Frashogard will come about when Ormazd and all the battles of Druge is finally complete. And people assume that Mazda is this anthropomorphic being, but as you mentioned, his divine aspects are all beautifully integrated into these concept or these divine concepts. And you said that beautifully. And I tell people that the way to that path of immortality is it's always through Asha, or actually through Vohumana. It's through Asha. It's through Spenta Armighty. It's through Kshatra Virya. It's through Havertats and Amardad. And you can say Spenta Manu. And then from there, you'll live that fulfilling life that ultimately where you radiate what we say Ushta, radiant happiness. And so I'm so glad that, you found that happiness and you found that alignment and I found it and we couldn't be, happier beings in our present. But for question number 6, so what would you say, was there a particular teaching, prayer, or verse that deeply moved you in this faith?
Right. So, as I mentioned, there's this thing in the scripture, and when I say scripture, more often than not, I'll refer to the Gathas specifically. I'm not anti-Avesta by any stretch of the imagination. In
Mm.
fact, I think that the Avesta deserves a place in the
Oh, of course.
doctrine. But definitely something in the Gathas that kind of reached out to me. So coming from this Orthodox background, I can't say that I don't have kind of it's kind of I reject the Orthodox answers, but I don't necessarily reject the Orthodox questions.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of the ways in which, and even though I might try to kind of observe Zoroastrianism according to its own merits, um, especially when you go back to the beginning when I kind of formally converted to this religion, I definitely still had those kind of orthodox questions in mind, orthodox kind of dialectics running through my head. And so I think the moment where I decided that I wasn't, it was the moment that I decided that I wasn't afraid of this religion anymore. It's this like deep-seated like orthodox idea, oh, this is some kind of like demonic trickery. It's something like, this is going to be some kind of like esoteric mysticism, like Eastern nonsense or something. It was when I read the verse, so I'll actually talk about at least two verses, but the first verse is towards the beginning of the Gathas, according to Dean Shaw J. Irani's translation. I think I have it I think I memorized it perfectly. But none of these sinners, O Lord, none of them know of the destruction of evil with the flood of molten metal, at the
Mm.
last turning of creation.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know if the last turning of creation is there, but he says the final destruction of evil with the
Mm-hmm.
flood of molten metal, the final end is indeed known to thee, O Lord Wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, coming from an Orthodox background, so I think it's another one of those things where I think Orthodoxy is unique in its eschatology. So in Orthodoxy, the infamous lake of fire are actually the physically manifest energies of God. So you might even encounter an icon. I don't know if maybe it's a Serbian icon where it seems as though this of the Last Judgment. It kind of when you look at it, and if you like pay attention to the detail, it seems as though the lake of fire actually emanates from Christ. And the
Mm.
explanation for that in Orthodox doctrine is that those human beings that have undergone theosis, which is the final preparation to meet God, who have God's energies within them, they interpret this coming of Christ and this lake, so to speak, as the clear waters of Christ's mercy, whereas
Mm.
those who have not undergone theosis, they actually experience it as this consuming fire, which
Ah.
then becomes the lake of fire. So they're actually this is what I mean when I talk about certain like similarities between Orthodoxy and Zoroastrianisms, but it's just that they differ, kind of ultimately differ because there are various details that don't quite add up. But thematically speaking, I think both Zoroastrianism and Orthodoxy agree that there are actually two kinds of hell. The first kind of hell, you refer to it in the English tradition as hell from Helheim.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which actually refers in the Orthodox, especially in English, because they defer to a lot of Greek terms. So in
Mm-hmm.
the Orthodox tradition, this is called Hades or Adish. Hades is the kind of the realm of death, the darkness, the gnashing of, maybe not the gnashing of teeth quite yet, but it basically means the experience of death, the separation of the soul from God. So this is Adish or Hades or Hell from Helheim, and I think it corresponds to Sheol in the Christian interpretation of the old Jewish religion.
Mm-hmm.
But then also in the Greek tradition, there is Tartaros, Tartarus, which is the lake of fire. That is something that only exists after the second coming.
Mm.
So
Yep.
I think, yeah, so this would correspond in Zoroastrianism. I would compare this to the abode of the false teacher or the abode of the falsehood,
Absolutely.
which is the so that would be the Zoroastrian Hades, where the consciousness becomes disconnected or disjointed from God.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of kind of at the Frashogard, as you said, there is going to be this flood of molten metal, which I think you actually elaborated on this. You told me that the righteous will interpret this as warm milk, whereas the sinners
Exactly.
will
Exactly.
interpret it as a purifying fire. So that's actually something
Exactly.
that actually a big kind of difference between Orthodoxy and Zoroastrianism. So in Orthodoxy, they actually have saints like Justin Martyr and Clement of Alexandria that kind of draw on the Chryseis Hystaspu, or the Oracle of Hystaspes, the Greco-Roman translation of the
Mm-hmm.
Wistos Psast, or the book of Hystaspes, or Wishta Aspa in the Avesta. And
Mm-hmm.
they actually say, so Justin Martyr, I can't remember exactly what Clement of Alexandria says, but he does draw on the Chryseis Eustaspou to talk about the fate of the sinners. And then Justin Martyr specifically says that it is. I think he addresses it kind of like as a question, where he's like saying, "Is it not also written in the oracle in the Sibyl oracles and also in the Hystaspes that truly the sinners will have their will earn their own at the end of things, like they will have their
Mm-hmm.
lot." But the difference is that, so I guess they kind of read that and they probably didn't like the part where it says the sinners will actually be purified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they thought, I think it was it was actually Oregon specifically. I think it was the fourth council, the fourth ecumenical council. He was preaching the doctrine of apokatastasis, which is the final salvation of all sinners, including the demons and Satan. And he was actually regarded, he and a number of other theologians were actually regarded as heretics.
Heresy, like
For
Pelagius and all them. Yeah.
yeah, for this doctrine of apokatastasis, the final salvation of all of God's creation. So the
Mm,
Orthodox Church rejects this doctrine that everything will be saved in the end.
mm.
Zoroastrianism, and I think there's a reference that Origen was inspired by Zoroastrianism when he said this, so that's a big indication that I would say that's at least like an indication. I think it's worth kind of digging more into that. I'm not a scholar myself, that even in Sassanid times they did believe this. So in the Great Sassanid Orthodox canon, that
Hmm.
the even those who communed with falsehood, they will resurrect and they will also be saved by the purifying
Absolutely.
energies of God.
Absolutely.
So it's something that it is an indication that, Origen had this idea, and he was a very kind of Eastern adjacent theologian himself. Um, so for sure, and so for me as an Orthodox Christian, and I'm reading this kind of like the flood of molten metal, and that apparently, I think I read it in like Britannica, in like an article on Britannica, that yes, Zoroastrianism in traditional doctrine believes that the sinners will be purified by God's light, and they will actually join the company of the righteous for the continuation of history, as it were.
Absolutely.
So this is, kind of like, it's like, wait a sec, it's so weird, like all the apologetics in the world like cannot compensate for just not finding Christ amazing anymore, right? They
Mm.
want to kind of like shoot you down for it because it's not like a very argumentative position. It's just you throwing it out there saying, "Oh, I'm not amazed by." Hold on a second. If you actually expect me to love the Lord my heart, to love the Lord my God with all of my mind, all of my heart, all of my being. I can't remember. There are like four clauses there, like heart, mind, soul, and body, or
Mm.
maybe something
Mm.
like that. So like it's the first commandment that says Jesus Christ says this is the greatest of all commandments, and the second one is love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Hmm.
Like, how do you expect me to fulfill this commandment if I'm no longer amazed by God? Have you like thought this through? Like these are like,
Exactly.
these are like I think all these like apologetics, they were bullied by atheists back in like 2012. They were told, atheists like to say that Christians were like, they weren't logical, they weren't scientific, they couldn't get laid. And now these apologetics are kind of just like, I figured this out relatively recently. It's like I always had this idea for a long time, but very, to kind of summarize it in these three clauses where it's like, okay, atheists back in 2012, they made fun of Christians because they're not logical, they're not scientific, and they can't get laid. And now you hear apologetics saying the same thing about atheists, like, no, atheism is actually anti-logical, anti-scientific, and no, actually atheists can't get laid. It's like the fact that you're saying the exact same things that atheists told you in 2012, it actually it's a big indication for me that it's all very pathological. Like
It
like
is.
they haven't thought it through. When someone says I'm not amazed by Christ, it's kind of just like their brain shuts down for like a second, and then they just like go back to the script of you being like a sinner, and they're LARPing as Archangel Michael, and they're like casting you down or something. So
It's like, oh, he brought he defeated paganism. He defeated, no, death. But it's like we still have all these things going
yeah,
today.
we have all these things, and it's like kind of weird because Christ defeated death. No, he did the exact opposite. He made death like an integral part of like they have this like in their hymnology. They say, "Oh, death, where is your sting?" The sting is when they say there is no resurrection without the crucifixion. There's your sting. So like
See?
what are you talking about? Yeah, exactly. So for something like Zoroastrian to just kind of like, I don't know, this is why I brought up the attribute of being amazing. It's kind of like it is amazing kind of kind of Zoroastrianism just kind of strolls on through, and like, yeah, we have the resurrection. Okay, but how do you have this how do you like, they're taught that they can't have the resurrection without the crucifixion, and it's like,
Hmm.
did these people know that they didn't come up with the idea of a resurrection? Like, even just
Nope.
not even counting Zoroastrianism, like the resurrection of Aristeas, the resurrection of Nero, the resurrection of like
Hmm.
resurrection, like the mythical
Oh,
poet.
Osiris. Mhm.
Osiris, the mythical poet, Orpheus, descending into
The
Hades, and then
Orpheus.
Orpheus. Yeah, like these people know that like resurrection was a thing long before Christianity like hit the scene. So like Zoroastrianism strolls along, and it has a lot of like things that all these other systems lack. So it's very kind of like close to orthodoxy in that respect. It has a very kind of a loaded cosmological like context behind it that's about the battle between good and evil, but then it just kind of like very easily strolls over these hurdles that orthodoxy just can't seem to like get across. Like, well, how do you have the resurrection? Because God can just do it. Like, what do you mean? Like,
See, it's circular reasoning.
and how do you have okay, but you say that you're not amazed by Christ. Like, look, Ormazd, like, hold on, he defeated. Hold on a second. So Ormazd is going to resurrect all the sinners, and he's going to defeat their sin, and he's not going to hate the sin. He's not going to hate the sinner. He's going to hate the sin. So he's going to purify all their sin, and everyone is eventually going to heaven. What part of this, like, what are you confused about when I say this is more amazing than
Exactly.
like this is like yeah. So, and I just quickly wanted to go over quickly the second verse, which is also a very powerful verse in my opinion, and it kind of it very much showcases this kind of like I don't know. Christians, I think, usually would default to the story of Jonah in the Old Testament for this
Hmm.
idea of a God who is the God of everyone. But in the Gathas, it's just so much more like you go back to this, and it's basically like the tail end of the Bronze Age, and the Old Testament, according to scholars, hasn't even been. It very likely wasn't even formulated until the Alexandrian period, first of all. But like you have this tail end of the Bronze Age, and I mean, hell, even if you like go back to like even if you assume that it was like in the time of Cyrus or Darius or whatever that these Gathas were being compiled, like I don't believe that. But in any case, it's like you're still very much in this like Old Testament time frame, and yet you have something that's so radiating this New Testament energy. It's this also towards the beginning of the Gathas. I think I memorized this one particularly by heart. Again, according to Dean Shaw Irani's translation, it's the followers of the Council of Untruth pray
Hmm.
for supreme bliss, even as we do. Then the Lord Wisdom, ruling in accordance with his divine sovereignty, in the full expression of his divine righteousness, he answers them, for the sake of your prosperity, we have decided to accept your good devotion. So
Mm.
like right there, it tells you even these. So you don't even have to like go through the motion of deciding what other systems qualify as Deva Yasni.
Exactly.
You can just start at the Deva Yasni. You can start at those who worship demons insofar as they pray for those things which are natural for a human being to pray, and it has been given to humanity that they pray for these things, the sheer act of them praying for them has already qualified as a communion with Mazda.
See?
So you can like, like, oh, like even in their like what do they think? Like, some Christians, like I have a Christian friend, he tells me that I tell him that Ahura Mazda fulfills my prayers, and he tells me, "Well, I believe that it's still Christ fulfilling your prayers." Like, some Christians will say no. Some Christians will say that it's like the demons doing that. I mean, Justin
I was
Justin
trying to test
Martyr,
you,
yeah,
take you away from
yeah,
God.
yeah. The demons are tempting me with prospects of having an actual successful family and like holding down a career
Oh, yeah.
and having offspring, while the Christ, I'm being God's strongest soldier by sitting around in my room all day
Yeah.
because
Monasticism.
like I yeah because Christianity made me have anxiety spikes when I started thinking about girls. Like, yeah,
Oh
thanks
my goodness.
Christ.
See, you're bringing
Yeah, thanks Christ. For sure.
bring back all my childhood trauma.
Yeah, like um so like and you have this verse, and it says like even these demon worshippers, like it kind of speaks to this. I don't know if you'll understand what I mean by this proto-Palamic. Palamism is an Orthodox doctrine, and to be very, very kind of brief about it in a nutshell, it's an Orthodox doctrine that the energies of God are just as much God as the essence of God. That's
Mm.
Palamism. So it's like, well, wait a second, how can I be so hold on a second. So according to Justin Martyr in his book The Apologia, where he makes that claim that if you encounter one of these religions and it has something similar to Christianity, it's actually demons like testing you or something.
Yep.
Um, which is weird because okay, so the demons apparently knew to put in Zoroastrianism a truth most high, which is the Son of God, which is I'm talking about Asha. On the topic of Asha, Asha the best truth, kind of correlates to the truth most high, and it is the Son of God, also an element of Zoroastrian doctrine. So these demons were like putting in all these elements, and then this like new shot, these like newcomers, Christians come along, and then they say, no, 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 these are all demons. Like those were all demons, like predicting Christianity like to a
Mm.
T, and like saying, oh no, 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 we were actually the real ones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're
I
actually
got that before with a Georgian Orthodox with like Saint
yeah.
Nino and all that. So
Mm.
So yeah,
So like he makes that case, but here you have like I said, like at least 1,000 years before Christ, between 1300, I would say between 1300 to 1200 BCE is the time frame of Zarathustra, and he kind of composes this hymn where like the fact that you're praying for supreme bliss, you kind of go back to what I was talking about happiness by just rejecting fear and falsehood. You have already embraced an attribute or quality of Ahura Mazda. Just by praying for supreme bliss, you have invoked the energy of Mazda that is eminent within the world. So it's like this
absolutely.
is already such a like this is like I don't know.
So beautiful. So healing, I mean.
This is 1,000 years like ahead of like Christianity. Like like Zoroastrians. Oh, but Christians they I don't know.
Oh, they gave birth to the
The,
Industrial Revolution. We had
no no
capitalism,
no they made the first hospitals or something
Oh
like that. It's
yeah.
like
Yeah, that
and
in
Zoro
Gandhi Shapur and Sassanid Empire.
Yeah, Gondi Shapur, you had like magi's going like from village to village, like healing people.
Hmm.
Even before Gondi Shapur, like, so it's like okay, whatever. Um, but yeah, or like like Christian ethics, like everyone in the world lives like do these people think that they invented charity or something? Like helping like what are the last two lines of the first of the core mantras, the very primordial utterance of Ahura Mazda? Um
Oh yeah, with the Yatahu video, right?
yeah, the Ahunawar, and like
Oh yeah.
I always memorize it from the beginning, but Tesda
Oh,
Mananko Kshathrim cha Ahurai Oyim Drigubio Dedat Wastarum.
Vastarim. Oh yeah, like you say, if you if you give to the
They
poor, basically Mazda, his kingdom is on earth, something like that.
it means the way I translate it, I always try to aim for the perfect balance between like meaning and translation, like literal in terms of literal translation. Kshathrim cha Ahurai or Kshathrim cha Ahurai. I would translate that as they render the Lord enthroned, and then Yim Drigubio. Drigubio is cognate with dervish,
Hmm.
so the helpless or the needy. So they
Hmm.
they render the Lord enthroned, who lead the helpless to green pastures.
Exactly. That
Those are the
wealth.
yeah, those are the two. I mean, green pastures is kind of poetic, but it's very obvious what it means. Like green
Hmm.
pastures, like I think across any culture, you know exactly what that means. That like
It
to
means
feed the poor,
agricultural
yeah,
prosperity, like milk and
prosperity,
honey.
wealth, yeah, happiness, like just prosperity, yeah, for sure. So like already there Zarathustra and the generation of the Yasna Haptan Haiti, they're already kind of expressing this doctrine that Ahura Mazda is kind of he for the sake of providing creation its opportunity to consent to his coming, to his participation. He dwells in his realm known as the Endless Lights. Um, I think this term comes from the Washt Mansur, if I'm not mistaken. It could be another piece from the Avesta. He dwells in the endless lights. And when we talk about acquiring the divine attributes, for me, what kind of elevates the theology isn't just from the perspective of personal happiness and fulfillment. I would actually say that this happiness and fulfillment comes from this kind of grand cosmological scale. When you talk about the battle between good and evil in Zoroastrianism, it's really a conversation about the battle between existence and anti-existence. So God being kind of like, maybe you could use the term hypostasis of true existence. God is not just a person, but he is a person that is manifest in this ideal reality, this perfection, which is why perfection, Haurvatat, is one of the Ameshaspentas,
Hmm.
where Ahura Mazda dwells in these endless lights. And then when we acquire these divine attributes, we are actually serving as an usher for the divine energy,
Absolutely.
so that when we manifest good words and good deeds, we are actually kind of putting, and this is the grace of Ahura Mazda. So you talk about like the Iranian empires, this like glorious ancient civilization, the religious charge that is behind them constructing this civilization with advanced technology, advanced administration, advanced theology, advanced like I hate like advanced culture, like advanced
Oh
poetry, like
man,
everything.
absolutely.
They are actually all of these things, and this is something that you see in their ideology. It's like they attribute all these things to the grace of Ahura Mazda, and they say, we attribute all good to Ahura Mazda. So the very good that is eminent within having a civilization, in the proper sense of the term, really is the kind of the eminent presence of God. And it actually, if you talk about civilization specifically, you're already invoking the Kshatravarya, which is one of the
Yeah,
Amesha
the
Spentas.
good dominion.
The good, yeah, the dominion, how I translate it, the dominion to be chosen, the dominion
Hmm.
that is
The
achieved through
righteous
its
chosen.
choosing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can also, of course, use, there's another term for what you're saying, the Wahu Shafra, the good dominion.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the avenues through which God kind of pulls into the world. And for us as human beings, our calling is through free will, because free will is the qualifier for this to actually happen. Free will is what enables the creation to have truly consented through Ahura Mazda's energies to kind of pool into the world, and be able to radiate in that way. And so the story of the Frashogard, or the Frashakriti, is the story of humanity kind of progressively learning to perfectly make this choice. So up until
Absolutely.
the Frashakriti, I think that's how you, or the Frashokereti, Frashogard,
Yeah.
however you
Oh,
want
I
to
get
pronounce
it.
it.
So
Yeah,
that's why I
yeah,
use the Middle Persian term because
yeah. Just
it's
use
just
the Middle
Rasho
Persian
Koreti.
Frashogard. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Frashokriti, I think that's the term. They it's a story of us kind of progressively learning how to make the perfect choice, and up until then, we're making these imperfect choices. We're kind of being lukewarm on our choosing of the good. So sometimes we progress and then sometimes we regress. So it's an epistemic struggle. It's a struggle to learn how to bring about this righteous dominion. And the flood of molten metal. So you talk about fire and metal. So these are attributes of truth and dominion. So flood of molten metal, in both a literal and a metaphysical sense, is the dominion of truth. So the
Hmm.
dominion of truth will wash over the world, bringing about the resurrection. These are the things that kind of, when humanity learns to bring about, to make the perfect choosing, the weirio of God,
That's when you
then God enters creation in totality, causing the flood of molten metal.
and the purity will
Yeah,
come about. Mm.
yeah, and up until then, you are kind of God is entering creation in as much, so he has given over to humanity this calling to be the ushers of God. And in that sense, he enters creation in as much as human beings basically let him in.
Exactly.
And
It's just that
and a big reason,
alignment.
yeah, yeah, and a big reason why humanity doesn't let him in is because of Druj,
Mm.
which is falsehood, which is this web of lies, of ignorance, of darkness, of us not really kind of even knowing where to begin. A lot of a lot of human beings still, basically most of humanity still lives under the oppression of this darkness. And Zoroastrianism, what the Zoroastrians traditionally prided themselves in, is this awareness of the cosmological context surrounding
Absolutely.
humanity. Um,
Absolutely.
and the fulfillment and the reason why, so consent is the simplest way you can put it. I think the reason why it's necessary for God to kind of give this over to humanity, and for that reason kind of tolerate for evil to exist. So I'm kind of getting into kind of my interpretation of Zoroastrian theodicy, why evil is able to exist. And we talked about this, like the battle between good and evil really being the battle between existence and anti-existence, is humanity needs to be like qualified in order to, and but in order to be qualified for that, we kind of have to become masters of ourselves in that
Yep.
sense. The reason is every time you acquire these attributes of God or these qualities of the divine nature, you are taking into yourself the attributes of existence. So as you're doing these things, you are making the existence more and more real, as opposed to a kind of pseudo existence where you have this like mixture of good and evil. And the reason why this evil like has to exist in a kind of sense is the good can only be achieved through the choosing. So in the same way that God is himself self-actualizing, he is eternally kind of he's not eternally passive. His eternity this might get theologically loaded very quickly, so I'm going to wrap this up very quickly. But his the way I interpret it is his eternity is the same thing as his self-causality. So he is
Hmm.
not eternally passive; he is eternally active and self-causing. And so, in order for you to kind of acquire existence and thereby establish a kind of a rule of only good, where there is no evil left, you have to imitate, and by imitating, that really means acquiring the attribute of this self-causality. So I know
Hmm.
this probably sounds like really, I don't know if this sounds like really complicated, and there's a lot more that I can say on the subject.
No, it
But I
was
guess,
beautifully
yeah,
said. Beautifully
yeah,
said.
but I guess kind of just to kind of give like a taste of what it really means to bring about this flood of right dominion.
Hmm.
It's a story of, and like you said, why we're like co-creators of God, why we're partners of God or colleagues of God,
Hmm.
is because what it really means is that God is kind of acting through us in that sense.
Absolutely.
In order for the creation to truly be realized, it must realize itself. And for that purpose, humanity was created, or sentient beings were created that are able to kind of discern the Amesha Spentas and be able to make the choosing, so that good can actually come about, and
Absolutely.
evil. Yeah. So like the moment God, oh well, why doesn't God just like kind of do away with evil immediately? It's because that's that's not how he lacks evil in himself. The reason he lacks evil in himself is because he is eternally rejecting the evil. So
Hmm.
humanity must also learn to reject the evil, and until humanity learns to reject the evil, then the evil is still there and plaguing us, and humanity then has this like great challenge, this kind of battle to overcome. And that's really what people are talking about when they talk about the battle between good and evil, human beings as warriors in the service of Ahura Mazda. It's all very kind of like I can talk about this for hours, but
But
hopefully that was
but
I
that
said
was
enough to
great.
convey my message. Yeah.
No, that beautiful. That made 10 out of 10 right there. 1,000% beautifully
Thank you.
said. And I think that's the ultimate goal. And the goal is that, we're in this mental battle, this mental and spiritual, and of course the outside world through our physical action just create the evil. Because I always said that in life, this battle between good and evil, for the most part, like I said, in the Monog, or which is like the spiritual world, everything is realized in Ahura Mazda's domain. And so it's like that perfection, like with Plato's forms of the theories. Everything that we assume and we think, the perfection is already up there. But in this world, the Getig, the material world, like it's still realizing, still becoming, and like that idea of Spentimania bringing about this constant expansion. Some people call it the progressive mentality or the Holy Spirit, but the idea is to train, inspire, and also give that wisdom for others to, yeah, like I said, not only to choose between what is right and good, but to, find that perfection along the way. Because I mean, this world is always becoming, and the only way evil can be destroyed, as you said, well, actually, it was KD Iran. He was like, Ahura Mazda already knows that evil is something that he can already defeat, but when there's free will and that they're sentient beings, the best way evil can be defeated it is when it's not chosen. And you said it perfectly, that causality of good and that bringing of it and that remaining of good, that training of yourself, that's ultimately what's going to kill it. Because like, so your free will is what ultimately can either keep evil alive or it can defeat the evil. And so that's why it's so powerful as human beings to why choosing with your very actions can just really redefine existence as a whole. So yeah, so let me see what other questions that I should bring about. Okay, so because we answered a lot, but so what would I say here? What does the concept of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds mean to you?
Mhm. So good thoughts. I suppose I mean, you already know this, but anyone else who wasn't familiar with me watching this can already kind of guess that I'm a big theology nerd. I'm a big metaphysics
Mm-hmm.
nerd myself. So, if I try to give an answer other than a very kind of metaphysical one, I wouldn't be able to really do that in good conscience. But for sure, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Good thoughts for me, the human mind is this kind of like place of overlapping where the material world overlaps. It's a crossway, or it's what's the word I'm looking for in English? Um, uh, like where a car is like at 90 degrees and like one has to wait. Um,
Mm-hmm.
help me out here, like
Mm-hmm.
crossways, okay, so like
Like
it's a
a little
four
collision.
directional.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, like a quick traditional street, yeah, with different stoplights and yeah,
I think you and I are both forgetting the word for this.
it's like a.
Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, like I'm talking about like wait, where you have like a cross section, and like cars
Mm-hmm.
are coming one way, and then cars on this way have to stop and wait, like crossway, something like
Oh
that.
yeah, like a
Um,
four. I know out here with 4 point stop away, like a 4 point stop, but there's
I
yeah,
think we're both forgetting it, but it doesn't matter.
yeah.
The point is that the human mind is the intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Intersection.
Yeah, intersection. Yeah, there
Intersection,
we go.
yeah.
There we go.
Intersection.
Yeah,
So the human
there's.
mind is a kind of localized intersection between the Minog, or in the Avestan material, the realm of the Menyuan, which is the realm of the mentalities and the material world. So good thoughts is something that is realized when the human mind, drawing from this realm of the main yuan, kind of draws on these divine qualities or divine aspects. Um, the good thoughts are, I would say, a constituent of Wahumana, of the good mind, which for me is a kind of way to say that this human being possessing intelligence, wisdom, and mindfulness, um, it is a way for God to radiate. It is a mind that has been brought in alignment with the divine mind, and a constituent of that are good thoughts. So these good thoughts are what the human mind acquires by drawing on these divine energies from the realm of the Menyuan. And then they manifest as either in the material world as either good words or good deeds, and or um,
Mm-hmm.
good words and good deeds. And so both of these ways are for this divine energy to be ushered into the material world, which is kind of another thing I can touch on based on what I was previously talking about. How does the material world, which is by definition mindless, consent to God being ushered into it? The way is through sentient beings like humanity, being kind of fully material and fully mental at the same time.
Mm.
So I don't want to get too much into it. Suffice to say, I think that the Christology of fully divine and fully human simultaneously comes across as a very poor reading of this like very kind of
Mm-hmm.
deep Zoroastrian philosophy. It's really what it really means is that the Saoshyant, the one who brings about excellence or who brings about progress, is one who is fulfilling this calling of ushering God into the material world, and this is accomplished through these words and deeds. Um,
Hmm.
and and the more good words and good deeds that you invest into the world, the more that world begins to reflect the ideal reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good thoughts are your ammunition, and good words are your bullets, and good deeds are the artillery strikes. Okay.
Perfectly said, beautifully said. That
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
That was perfectly said. So let's see. We got three more to go because I know
Hmm.
we talked a lot and this has been great.
Yeah.
So let's see what these last three
Yeah, of course. Of
questions
course, of course.
you can see. So what would you say to someone who is curious about Zoroastrianism but is unsure if they belong?
Hmm. Well, I would, I think it must start with the question, how much do you want to know? Because conversion, like I'd be honest with him, I'd say I prefer if you became Zoroastrian, but fundamentally, you're not going to be able, it's not in continuity with everything we've said so far, it's not the right conversion unless it comes from themselves, like it comes through their werio, their choosing of the religion. So, and like it's good that I brought up that verse that says that even those like so if demon worshippers can commune with Mazda by doing the right thing, then so
Hmm.
can just about any person, right? So
Absolutely.
it's not it's not I would say something like, it's not a given that people are going to go to hell because they're not Zoroastrian. Everyone has a I guess maybe I could talk about I won't go too much into detail, but the idea of the wiser and the less wise choice. So everyone has their own kind of that's the Dana, that's the Dean, that's the vision of Zarathustra is that everyone has a certain kind of predisposition, epistemic predisposition, and in everyone's Dana there is a wiser of two choices. So it's not about you can be you can be tech you can fulfill this as kind of Zoroastrian requirement without being nominally Zoroastrian.
Hmm.
So in that sense, I would just ask, how much do you want to know? Because people are more likely to kind of realistically convert if you just have the knowledge and you tell them what they want to know and just let the natural beauty of Zoroastrianism shine through. Kind of don't try to like force it because, it's an insult to the religion.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. I think that's the thing. Everybody has a calling, and I believe that, like, what we've been discussing so far is that all of this is just so self-evident. It's just so self-evident in nature, and I truly believe that Mazda is always calling everybody. As I felt a calling even as a young boy, seeing cues about it, with like a fire altar burning in my mind for years, not even knowing what it is, and the fact that I've got along with Iranians and I've really fell in love with Cyrus the Great and the Sasanian, the Parthian empires, and I've never understood why. And then when you get to this philosophy and that idea of happiness, and you just realize that there's something more. But then when you see Zarathustra's message being made for those who came far and near, and the fact that you can attain what we've always wanted, 'cause I think everybody has always wanted the things that we have found, and that is that radiant happiness, that belonging, that sense of knowing the ultimate truth, the actuality of reality. Because the beauty about this religion is that it's a religion that's not about like, unlike, things like Gnosticism or even Sufism, all this mysticism. It's not about you just giving yourself away to the unknown. It's about, knowing reality for what it actually is. And for some people, that assumes that's going to be about the rejection of actually feeling as if there can be nothing more. But I said with Mazda and with the divine attributes that he has, there's always room for expansion and growth, and your actions and words and deeds provide a whole different outcome from things. So there's not going to be this restraint like some people, restraint like what some people believe, and so it's just a religion where I think you can find true fulfillment, you can find the answers that you need, and more importantly, that calmness to your soul that we've all been yearning for. And it was just so beautiful about what you said. So for our other
Actually,
answer.
sorry.
Oh yeah, go
There's
ahead. Yeah.
there's actually a really good way you've kind of inspired me to come up with something. You were talking about Gnosticism and Sufism, kind of
Mm.
giving themselves over to kind of like the mystery or the unknown. Now,
Hmm.
I'm not very familiar with either of those. I'm probably more familiar with Gnosticism just by
Hmm.
default. But I'm not going to speak for them. But what I will say is that there are those in the world that kind of cling to the darkness, that kind of like
Mm.
hang around in the darkness. They think giving themselves over to the darkness is the thing. And then there are those that kind of think the point is to just kind of stand around the fire and kind of avoid the darkness and kind of
Mm.
like be afraid of the darkness and just kind of just don't allow anyone to move any further from this fire. And then Zoroastrianism is like entirely unique because I think it's the only system thus far where the point is to grab that fire and then go into the darkness and then like shine it
Absolutely.
around. That's kind of the difference between that's how Zoroastrianism stands out from like these new
Absolutely.
other principles. Yeah.
So that's beautiful, yeah, because like I
Yeah.
said, because we never been a religion where it's about idleness or fearing the world and just letting go and letting God. It's all about, you being, because God made us. I'm not trying to say like we're like jihadists or anything, but God made us to be His warriors, like to spread good and to take the light, to face the hardships of life, the challenges as they are, and more importantly, accumulate that wisdom with vohumana, so you can be well equipped to conquer it. So, to our other question, because
Mhm.
we got a couple more to go. So, if you can say one thing to Osho Zarathustra right now, what would it be?
I'm honestly I'm not sure because like I thought about this question before and it's like I don't think there's a one thing that I don't think it'd be doing it justice, right? If you were going to talk to Zarathustra, then it's going to have to be like at least like a 7 hour kind of like dissertation, it's
Oh
like
yeah.
at least one of those, so like I'm not sure. I guess if I had to say, what is the one thing that I would say to Zarathustra if I had to pick one? I would say I try to get his kind of take on something that is still very much part of my learning journey in Zoroastrianism.
Mm.
It's like how much of the Dhyana, oh Asho Zarathustra, would you say? Well, actually, he wouldn't know what Asho means.
That's something later came.
Yeah. O Manthrawa or Mathrawan,
Hmm.
O Mathrawan Zarathustra. What part of the Diana is meant to be interpretative, and what part of it is like, yeah, do what Zarathustra did, right? So like,
Hmm.
I think there's a big within the community. I think there's a lot of like people aren't exactly sure about what is it that's supposed to be like very interpretative and very kind of open to interpretation, and what
Hmm.
are some of the things because if you're going to be consistent about it, there you have these like three currents in Zoroastrianism, right? Main currents. You have the like Gothic, I call them the Gothic philosophers or just the Gothists.
Hmm.
I don't call them the Gothic monotheists because I reject the idea that the dualists aren't monotheistic.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I would call them the Gothists, and then you can either call them the dualists, or you can call them, the Avestan or the Sassanid Orthodox kind of group. And there were times when these two groups didn't see eye to eye. There were
Hmm.
times when the dualists kind of thought these Gothists were heretics, and sometimes not. But I think both of these groups kind of like very consistently agree that these Zurvanists, um, don't mean to start any hate with the St. Petersburg Zurvanist community or anything, but both of these groups have historically just consistently regarded these Zurvanists as heretics. Kind of
Oh,
like no,
absolutely.
yeah. So like if you're gonna go that far, like if you're gonna be consistent, then you can't really say that anything is a heresy per se. But if you're a Gothist and you think the Zurvanism is a heresy, I'd say there's definitely got to be something about the religion that you're gonna have to put your foot down and say this is not open to interpretation. Like Ahura Mazda
Exactly.
being the creator, this is not open to interpretation. Um, maybe there's something semantic about it, maybe like whether you identify the creator as this Ahura Mazda or whether
Mm,
it kind of refers to something else. But definitely there is a creator in the Gathas. You have this doctrine that these divine aspects that or divine concepts that Zarathustra is talking about later elaborated as the Ameshaspentas. That this is part of the doctrine, it's like this is how the world works. Like if you're Zoroastrian, you believe that this is how the world works. So kind of like let us know, Zarathustra, where do we need to put the foot down and where do we can we go and say, okay, this is interpretative. This is like has 17 different hidden meanings behind it or something like that. That's something that
exactly.
I'm asking. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely a great question. I think that's what it is because I think the bridge nowadays is that yeah, everybody wants to. I don't know if it's there's a shame in the past with like what happened with some of the late Sasanian Orthodoxy or maybe the but then again I tell most people that a lot of what we know about like the Sasanian Orthodoxy is kind of in the and how to say it's kind of shrouded in mystery because I mean we have a lot
Hmm.
of the post Sasanian doctrines like that were given to us in the the ninth, well, eighth, ninth, 10th centuries and beyond. And we have things like our Den card, we have the Minog card, we have the what's the other book? The Shiest, what how do you say the Sheshe Ne Shiest, no, the Shiest Ne Shiest, but I guess what's kind of like you
Sure,
can say
yes, sure, yes, ne sure,
Yeah,
yes.
that's how you say it. Show
Yeah.
yes, and they show yes. Where it draws a lot of stuff from the Vindy Dot and some things that were never even there. They had the Riviots, and I do really think that a lot of these communities were really trying to find the original message that Zarathustra had, and it's sad too because a lot of what was interpreted in those very days there was a lot of Islamic influence. There was also the priesthood was pretty much already decimated, so very few priests really know what was actually being said. But thankfully, with Martin Hogg and all those guys that came later in India were able to finally reread what this actually really meant. So, that kind of took away from the idea of Zervanism or Zervanism being like the belief system of the past. Because we know, like in the Bunda Hashin, I believe it's in the fourth chapter, it mentions how, Zervan was a creation of Mazda and was supposedly like metaphorically speaking, a 15-year-old boy supposed to like being the father of Mazda and Ahriman. And so you really did see, a lot of deviations from what was before. And thankfully for the Avesta, like, or the younger Avesta that we have, thankfully it doesn't contradict anything about the Gathas. I mean, I know there's the whole arguments between what the Izads or the Yazadas are and what the Amish Pentas are, but they're all consistent with the idea of Mazda still being supreme and they're the powers under Mazda. And like I said, just like how we said before with the Amish Pentas, these Yazadas are all again just these attributes of Mazda manifesting themselves in ways that can allow human beings to understand their
Yeah, that's
purpose.
that's why I said that like I reject the idea that the dualists aren't monotheistic. I reject the
Mm.
idea that the Sassanids, right, even like worst case scenario, the Azatas are like, Mesopotamian influences or like
Yeah.
whatever. Like, like even like whatever, like temple culture, statues, like because they saw the statue of Marduk or they saw the statues of the Mesopotamian gods, so that's why they decided to build those statues. Like worst case scenario, it really doesn't matter because I still
Exactly.
reject the idea that like they didn't know that Ahura Mazda was supreme, that the Gathas. I mean, that's why, if I'm not mistaken, Gathas are the most preserved text. Like that really kind of says, even with all of that devastation, everyone knew that the Gathas were supreme, that the
Hmm.
Gathas were the head of scripture, that Ahura Mazda was the source of all existence. It's like no one in the Sassanid era thought that like there was a Zurvan who is the father of Hormazd and
Hmm.
Ahriman. No
Yeah,
shot. Yeah.
yeah, actually, well, and before I go on my next question, I've always kind of
Yeah.
said it kind of reminded me to like Mormonism, where they kind of believe like how God created Satan and Jesus to be like I don't know what they call them in their terms, but basically they're like brothers. It's almost like similar to that in its nature. But it's
Yeah,
not,
Mormon Zoroastrianism is Zoroastrian and Mormonism. Yeah.
yeah, basically. So,
Yeah.
so this is not to hate our Mormon viewers out there. We love you guys, but that's what it sounds like. All right, so to our
Yeah,
last,
the brothers, the Jesus and Satan brothers, or Mazda Herman brothers.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like
Armin,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
neither
yeah.
one you believe in, they give you your blessings and all that. Yeah. So let's see to our last and final question. It says, so what are your thoughts on Zoroastrianism and its relevance to our modern society and the future of humankind?
hmm Zoroastrianism, I think it's a very kind of in terms of the popular consciousness, it's a very nascent kind of in that sense religion. It's more prominent than I thought. Like obviously the fact that I was able to grab a hold of it, kind of becoming aware of it, even if it's through a racist meme from 2015, like
Yeah, I feel
or
that.
like just the fact like I already see people like criticizing Zoroastrianism online. And for me, that's a
Hmm.
good sign because like if people are already hating on you, so like you've
Hmm.
already done something right, you're already on the map kind of like if people are like like and I wasn't aware that like Muslims in the Arab world are very acutely aware of Zoroastrianism.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
We're
Oh,
called
it's
the Majus,
Majusi.
which I think is quite endearing, honestly. It's like like
Oh, they
I don't, yeah, like even though I know that there's like a really bad history behind that, but it's like okay, I'm one of the Majus now, so to speak.
Majus.
But
And
it's definitely more prominent than I thought. I think that there's actually a very simple way it can actually become more prominent. So definitely, it's something that it has to be. It has the potential to be a very good kind of alternative to Christianity and Islam that
hmm.
isn't then like Buddhism or Gnosticism, right? So it's like it's something that I think fits within that category of like a collective common vessel of faith and kind of like ideological charge. Like what we were talking about, like the cosmological context behind it all, the eschatology,
Hmm.
Zoroastrianism, I think, is one of those religions. Like even if you go back to the Sassanid era, right? I think you would recognize more of like this Western religious structure in Zoroastrianism than like something like Buddhism or
Hmm.
Hinduism or something like
Absolutely.
or like Manichaeism. Even though Manichaeism kind of like borrows from Zoroastrianism.
Hmm.
I think Zoroastrianism is still it has the potential to be a kind of high church culture that nonetheless does a lot of things right that are left that are left in the gutter in Christianity and Islam. So I think a lot of people that are jaded with those systems but still want to have like a very kind of kind of grounded religion, a religion that isn't like all about like mysticism, like you said. That's very much about like this kind of high metaphysical context. Um, it's a good alternative for that, and obviously it's something that has to be done kind of. I think it has to be done right. The theology doesn't need to be fleshed out. It's more that the theology needs to be expressed in a way
Exactly.
that's fleshed
Exactly.
out. Yeah. But there's actually a simpler way you can get to that point. It like whether or not you have that like expression fleshed out. So I was actually talking with our mutual colleague Caleb about this
Mm.
before. Um, so when someone like goes on the internet and they try to search for like divine mystic chants or like religious chanting, you'll notice that there's this like monopoly is not the right word because obviously these are different competing systems, Christianity,
Oh yeah.
Islam, Buddhism, but like have it to like look grab whatever manuscripts you have, like find the material, like some of the thing, draw on some of the things that you have, and then make some of the other stuff. Like you can take, like for example, Faria Faraji. He had that song. I'm sure you've heard it, dedicated to Shapur the Great,
Oh yep. Oh yeah. I
where
have that on my
he
page.
has, yeah, you have that on your page exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and in the description, he states that the tone or the mode that was used in the song is a like a northwest Iranian like regional cousin of the Turkish Uşak and the Byzantine chant mode 1.
Hmm.
Byzantine chant mode 1, by the way, is the best. I don't even know why the other like 8 or 9 or 7 like even exist. Like I
I
only
know
listen to one
it's
anyway.
a very like ancient,
Yeah.
just like very just epicness to it.
And I hope, and like, I want to say it's a very masculine tone, in my
Exactly.
opinion. I think the mode that Faria uses for Shapur the Great is like the definitive kind of mode that you would use for like masculine chanting, masculine hymns.
Hmm.
So like, draw on that, draw on something from Palbods or Barbad's like Dastgah system, draw on like whatever you have, and then like combine it with whatever else you have, like any idea you have from the temple tradition, and kind of compile a Zoroastrian chanting. And like
Absolutely.
don't let like Christianity and Islam and Buddhism like occupy this like monopoly of like people's attention when they search for like religious chanting online, that they're
Absolutely.
they're not going to come across anything Zoroastrian. A lot of there are a few chants out there are a few like prayers. A lot of them are kind of in a falsetto. A lot of them are kind of like not recorded properly. Even some of the ones
Hmm.
that I like, there's a recitation of the I can't forget the exact type of hymn, but one that is dedicated to Asha,
Hmm.
from an Indian priest from back in like the 70s. And it like sounds good, but this isn't presentable. Like the audio isn't quite
Oh,
there.
it's very distorted, yeah, and
Yeah, it's very distorted.
very
So like,
echoey and all that, yeah.
yeah, so like, or like for another thing that I liked about Fadia's stuff is like, there's a part in his Thermopylae composition,
Hmm.
his symphony about the Battle of Thermopylae. It's
Hmm.
called Shadows over Xerxes.
Oh, yep, yep. I heard
Yeah,
that
and
one.
like, yeah, so it's like when he gets to the chorus, and you hear this like echo of the song "I Am Cyrus" in the background,
Hmm.
Adam Kurush, Washna Ahura Mazda. Like there's got to be something here that someone in the Zoroastrian community that has the means, they can hear this and they're like, yeah, I could probably like be inspired by this to devise a system for how Zoroastrian chanting should work, and that in a way that's authentic and like
Hmm.
historically consistent. That it's not like I don't know, AI Baroque singing but with Zoroastrian like lyrics or something, or like I don't know, like rock covers of like Parsi songs or or something, I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, like have a like traditional Iranian chanting, traditional Iranian kind of yodeling. It's not really yodeling, but kind of, if you want to, you can incorporate that and kind of
Oh, yeah.
mix it in with like like choruses, like you have like I don't know, I'm imagining like a female lead,
Hmm. Oh,
that's
that
like
would work.
chanting, yeah, that's chanting the lyrics, and then you have a masculine like chorus where it sounds like Byzantine chant mode 1, something like that. Do something, just
Yeah,
don't let do that, and that's like 80% of the battle. If people just
absolutely.
get an awareness, like they just search for divine, like mystical chanting, and they have Zoroastrian material available, then people will start like, I don't know if I can say flooding, but like, there will be a lot more people inquiring and wanting to learn more about Zoroastrianism if you have that kind of thing.
Absolutely, because I mean, you
Yeah.
look at it actually throughout the world. I mean, you look at black gospel music. I mean, that's like already taken over the world. It's popular, and even places like that that's like
Yeah.
so unexpected. Japan, out of all places, like I think one of the top 10 consumers of black gospel music, despite them being a Shinto Buddhist nation. And I really think that music is so powerful that it can just. I think that's the thing. I think if music can be, as you're saying, done properly in a way that can just really reach that soul. Because I mean, because that Persian culture and the Zoroastrian tradition already has more than enough in it to really win the hearts of people. But like you said, if it's expressed properly, I know it can be good. And I'll say this, I think some modern artists really do kind of have this Zoroastrian spirit. I know Freya does it, but even some modern rock artists like from Godsmack, Lacuna Coil, and there's an artist, her name is Free Dominguez. She's from Kidney Thief. She has like a very almost like her voice almost sounds like almost like an Eastern priestess. And like when you hear her like chant or do like that wailing, it just like I get visions of like, a priestess in a fire temple praying to Anahita or something. So, you got people that I think have survived elements of this Zoroastrian way of singing and, or interpretation of musical theory. But yeah, if it can be done right, I really think it can be a magical thing, and it will win, like you said, win so many over, and more people probably be more connected just by that alone, and then that will be that bridge to really allow them to know the Goths, because after all, the Gathas are a singing tradition by Zarathushtra and then the Hoptall Gati. Same thing, a singing tradition, all memorized by the devotees and Zarathustra himself. Because I mean, it's hard to believe, 4,000 years ago there was no writing system for the Avesta, and now he was able to remember like these, what is it, like these 10,000 words. I mean, it's amazing. No, not probably not
Something
10,000,
like that, yeah.
probably like
Like
6,000. Is it 6,000?
I think it was like because I know that like the Avesta is like numerologically coded to the Gathas, and it's
Yeah,
like
the
there
72.
there's I think that it's about 1,000 verses or something like that
So
of the
yeah.
Gathas. 1,000 and change, and then the Avesta has that many like chapters in it. And then the
Hmm.
72, Caleb was doing work on this, where he was saying the there's like a missing 72 like chapters of the Avesta, and the 72 are actually carry over from the liturgy from the Yasna. Um, so yeah, and which is evidenced by the fact that when the Zoroastrian community lost some of the original chapters that were included in the Yasna, they deliberately used their leftover material just to
Hmm.
keep it at that 72 chapter
Exactly. From like the
level in
Yas.
the yeah. So yeah, something like that.
But yeah, that would be good. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was amazing talking to you. You have any final words? This is after all the last question that was answered. So if you have any little final
Yeah.
words before, yeah, we wrap this up.
I mean, I guess I have a million followers, but because I could keep talking about this, but yeah, for sure. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure doing this.
Oh,
I was kind of
absolutely. Glad to
worried.
have you.
I was kind of worried coming on, like, oh, what if I forget what to talk about? But no, it's like
Oh man,
I'm so naturally interested in this topic that as soon as I start, like, it's hard to like to like stop myself from talking about it more.
I got, like I said, I've
Yeah.
learned. I mean, I know we've learned from each other, but I think this was very educational, very beneficial. I think it's probably our best, episode yet. So I'm very, very happy to have you on here.
Happy to be here. And yeah, if you're doing anything else, if you want me to kind of tag along, contribute, shoot me. Oh yeah, and one thing, I want you. Can you just send me the links to those to that chanting you were talking to that singing you were talking about?
Oh yeah,
Send it over to
absolutely.
me in WhatsApp. Yeah, send it over to me in WhatsApp. But yeah, if there's anything else you're doing, you want me to tag along, contribute, I'm happy to help, man.
All right, absolutely, man. So I just want to say, Dimitri, it was an absolute pleasure. I mean, this was amazing. I know the audience is going to learn so much. I mean, even you really helped sharpen my understanding even more. And I know, yeah, you're going to really win many over to this faith with your intellect and knowledge. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us again on this episode of My Path of Asha. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you again. And I want to say Ushtave to you all. And, may Ahura Mazda, fulfill his duties throughout the world and lead others to the faith. So thank you all, and we'll have you again. Bye bye. Take
Bye
care,
bye.
Dimitri.
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
All right. Let's see.